Hello, Spokane. Thank you for tuning into another episode. This is Katie. I'm here with Aaron, and today our guest is Kayla Bowker with Where Your Feet Take You. Thanks so much for joining us today, Kayla.
Thanks for coming, Kayla.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so starting off, just a couple icebreakers. Shake the nerves out. Aaron, you want to go first?
Yeah, so you'll get to know Kayla through this podcast, but I know her as somebody that's super fit and healthy. So I think a good question would be, what is your guilty pleasure? Like, if you're going to cheat or whatever, what would that be?
Potato chips.
Potato chips.
And I don't know if I necessarily would say that I ever like cheat because I don't know if I believe in that, but I love potato chips. Yep. And I allow myself to have them every day.
More of an energy out, energy in type thing. Yeah.
You're my kind of gal. I'm like, potato chips for dessert? Yes, please.
Mm-hmm. Almost every training session I come back, I'm like, I need just a handful. I need a handful of potato chips.
Like your traditional potato chip?
No. Just, I don't know, more chips in general. Kind of doesn't really have I don't really have
I do not discriminate against the chips.
Exactly.
Love it. And then for my question, if you could travel anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh, I really want to do, I was actually just talking to my husband about it the other day, and he kind of gave me this serious eye roll. There is a triathlon circuit, not really a circuit, but a series of races in New Zealand that takes about like a month of time. They have like a 70.3 and then a full and a couple different ones. And so one of these days, that's my goal, is to go spend 1 to 2 months in the New Zealand, Australia region and kind of do that range of racing.
Oh my gosh, talk about a cool way to see a country.
Yes.
That would be amazing. Like any cool movie with like the best scenery. Oh, yeah. You always find out it's like in New Zealand.
Yeah. 100%. I don't know. Running through Australia, you're going to come across those crazy animals though. No, that's awesome. So with that.
Yeah, Kayla. So why don't we kick it over to you and just tell us a little bit about yourself. Just a little blurb about who you are.
Yeah, so I guess if we're just kind of saying like in high level terms, I am an athlete, so I'm a triathlete. I, as well as that, I've turned that kind of into my full-on career. I'm a triathlon coach and a mental performance coach, so they all kind of tie in on that. But a little bit more like outside of my career and passion and everything, I am soon to be a mom of 2, which is kind of been the most like life-changing thing I've ever done. I was someone who didn't want kids and had one, and like within 2 weeks later, I went to my husband and was like, we need another. And so that's probably one of the biggest pieces of me, is having become a mom. It's kind of made me a better person, stronger person. I don't know if it's necessarily made me more fun because I am so exhausted, but it's definitely just been kind of the best piece of me. So I kind of think that that's the best piece that describes me. Is I'm an athlete, I'm a businesswoman, I'm a mom, and I believe very strongly in sharing passion and searching for your passion and chasing your dreams and kind of going for things, even when you're not 100% sure if you can do them. So.
You wear all the hats.
Try to. Sometimes it feels like it's too many, but that's okay.
Yeah. So are you from Spokane? Sorry, Aaron.
No, I'm not. I grew up in Hood River, Oregon, so about 60 miles east of Portland, nestled right in between the Columbia River and Mount Hood. So really small town. It was a great place to grow up.
What brought you to Spokane originally?
I went to Gonzaga.
Oh.
So I graduated from Gonzaga University with a bachelor's in biology. Left Spokane, swore I'd never return. Ended up back here, met my husband, and I'm still here.
Yeah. Has it grown on you?
It has. It has grown. It's home now. So
nice. Awesome. Goes the eggs, by the way.
Yes.
This Saturday, right?
Ooh, yeah. 6 o'clock.
So on the athlete side, I'm curious, would you consider are you a professional athlete? Are you a professional Iron?
Not
woman?
by like labeling stance. So I don't have my professional card. I guess technically when I was reviewing all the qualifications, I qualified back in 2018. Didn't really realize that. And then I got pregnant, so didn't really did race, but not enough to do requalification. Then COVID, and so now we're here. So that is the high level goal for end of 2021 into 2022 is to qualify for my professional license and be labeled as a professional athlete. But I do consider myself a triathlete, and that is something that I do.
Okay. Yeah, once you're done having babies, you can start pursuing.
Exactly.
Kind of put a halt to things a little. I
did.
think, at least on social media, though, I see you still training, still actively participating in some Ironman still. And
Yes, I did for my first. When I was pregnant with my first, I raced 4 70.3s, which is a half Ironman distance. So I raced 4 of those. And then with my second, which I'm pregnant with now currently, it just doesn't work timing wise. Racing doesn't actually start up for, another 3 or 4 weeks in the United States, really. And I'm too far along. It's just not, it is feasible, just not for me.
Yeah.
So,
but you'll still train this year.
yep, I've been training the entire time. The goal is to start racing again in October. So that's the hope.
That's awesome. So, you touched on it. It's a lot on your body. 4 races. You were pregnant. How do you mentally do that?
For me, it really comes down to the fact that I love it. Yeah. Training and racing I look forward to it every morning when I wake up. It's what I want to be doing. And there was just no question for me that I was going to do it when I was pregnant. I believed very strongly that women don't become fragile just because they are pregnant. And that was actually something I battled a lot with when I was pregnant with my first. I haven't been as much with this one. It hasn't been as prominent, but that was something I battled a lot with, just from getting outside perspective of this concept that, oh, you're pregnant, you basically can't do things anymore. And I did not believe in that in the slightest. And I kind of wanted to go out and prove to myself and to other women out there and men that women do not become fragile just because they're pregnant. And so that was a big piece for me. That belief, that passion, that really kind of fueled the drive of what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. I've never really thought about it where people consider themselves fragile. I've just looked at it from a perspective is there's no way that having a baby doesn't make a person tougher. At least that's my perspective. So
it is definitely true. There are some days where I'm like, okay, if I can, go through labor, I can do this. It definitely. And you have to become a lot more in tune with your body, and that takes a lot of self-awareness, and that takes a lot of strength. So you gain a lot from it.
So since the main topic today is going to be mindset, mental toughness, and you mentioned this is something you love to do personally. You get up every day and you look forward to it. There's got to be some days, though, that you're just not feeling it. Also, you probably coach people that don't have the same determination that you have. So my understanding is that you coach people on the mental side of things. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what that looks like?
Yeah, so on that instance, I think a lot of times what happens when we think mental toughness, so if I was to ask you the question, what does mental toughness mean to you? Most likely you're going to respond is the ability to push through something difficult. Yes, totally true, 100% true. However, there's much more to that. This is more of this concept and this idea of how you speak to yourself in a way that fuels you to get the best out of you that you can. And that's a better way of really thinking along it, because you cannot be mentally tough. You cannot have mental endurance. You cannot push through things that you want to push through if you cannot talk to yourself in a way that fuels that positively, productively, etc. And being able to focus on what it is that can kind of fuel that. And a lot of times what happens is that we tend to focus a little bit more on this concept of chasing the feeling that we're going for. So take motivation, for example. Motivation is more of a feeling than it is anything. And motivation is awesome. Motivation is usually what gets you to sign up for the thing, gets you to pursue the master's degree, go back to school, be mom, be dad, whatever it is that you're doing in your life. Motivation usually gets you to start. It's the spark. But it's not what keeps you going, because there isn't a single person alive out there that can tell you that they have days where they don't want to do something. Not a single person. You could talk to Michael Jordan, LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, huge name people, and they're going to tell you they have days where they struggle doing things, don't have the motivation to do it. What you have to focus more on to be that way is this idea of the dedication and discipline, the behavior. So if you want to be motivated, you have to have motivated behaviors. If you want to be confident, you have to have confident behaviors. and they all kind of fuel each other. So your behavior fuels your feelings then fuel the performance or the output that you want to get out of it. So a lot of times that's where I usually kind of start to guide people is, okay, first, what is the feeling that you're looking for? But let's not chase that. We need to chase the behaviors that create those feelings. And that comes from kind of creating dedicated habits, daily habits. Creating and becoming more mentally tough has more to do with the habits that you put into things rather than even necessarily how you're feeling about them. So that's a lot of times what we focus on when we're doing it.
So with your clients, that's what you focus on, is helping them start by building those habits.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And this is what you do every day. And it's not a feeling. This is just what you do.
You take the feeling. So first you always want to ask what it is that you're looking for. Yeah. Because a lot of times what happens is when we're doing things is we start out doing things because we are searching for a feeling. And we get lost in this concept of doing things for who we are versus what we're doing. Mm-hmm. So you always want to start with the feeling that you're looking for. One of the biggest questions that I ask is, I work a lot with athletes, so that's usually where we go. But how do you want to feel as an athlete? How do you want to feel as a triathlete? How do you want to feel when you cross the finish line? So what is that feeling is that you're looking for? That's the start. So yes, you want to start for that feeling, but then we take that feeling and we say, okay, this is the feeling that you're looking for. You want to feel strong. You want to feel happy. You want to feel passionate, motivated, disciplined, whatever it is. And then we say, okay, that's the feeling. Now we got to fuel that feeling with your behaviors. What actions do you need to place on a regular basis, on a daily habit-wise, in order to continually fuel those? Because those daily habits are your dedication, are your discipline, and then that's what keeps you, right, feeling motivated. If you're trying to say you always want to constantly feel more confident on the bike, but you're someone who is, skipping bike workouts, kind of half-assing them, barely being engaged, not being present. If it feels too tough, you're skipping them. Are you going to feel more confident on the bike? Not likely.
Yeah.
So by changing your behaviors, you then can fuel the feelings that you're looking for. And that's what we do. We just create, it sounds silly, but we create action plans, little daily check boxes, because the more that you have these little daily check boxes of things that you can do, then the more that you're going to constantly have that mental toughness to be able to constantly do it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's crazy because I think having been an athlete myself playing college soccer, it's so easy to get in the cycle of being like, I want this feeling, but then not making any changes. Mm-hmm. And it's just so cyclical and you just feel stuck 100%. As an athlete where you're like, where can I go? I can't get past this mental barrier to get there.
And oftentimes if you just break it down into something small, and that's the thing. That's why I it's a kind of a strange way to look at it. I always call it daily action plans, little action plans. But when we create those little action plans, what we're creating is small changes. Yeah. Small changes make big changes, right?
So I want to kick this over to the business side of things. So I know most people listening just assume that you only coach athletes on the mental side of things. Mm-hmm. But my understanding is you also are able to coach people in the business marketplace. Mm-hmm. So this is totally off the cuff, and Katie wouldn't be expecting this, but as realtors in the real estate marketplace, there is so many ups and downs. Mm-hmm. You'll have weeks where you're just crushing it. Everything goes right. Deals are closing, money's flowing in, and you're on a high. And then the next week, clients are saying they're going to go with someone else. Deals are falling through. It's just a roller coaster. Katie's actually experiencing it.
I'm like,
Katie's kind of new-ish in the industry, and she's had a good couple weeks. And then this week has been absolutely horrible. So what would you tell Katie and myself? I go through the same thing. How do we manage that? They're not just, you can't just get up in the morning, in my opinion, and if you, read for half an hour and do this and this. I guess it could prepare you mentally to be ready for that bad day. But what would you say?
So you're not actually too far off track. That is definitely one thing that you can do, because if you do continue to keep your daily habits, within where you're starting the day with intention, then it's going to, that literally sets the day that way. So our brains work in this really cool way where our brains are a filter. It's called the reticular activating system. And it basically is a filter. So my really silly example is if you've ever going to go buy a car and you really want to buy a lime green Toyota 4Runner because nobody else has a lime green Toyota 4Runner, right? Well, all of a sudden, you are going to see lime green Toyota 4Runners everywhere. Why? Your brain is looking for it. Yeah. It is filtering for that lime green Toyota 4Runner. And it works the same way with how you want to respond to situations, how you want to respond to life, how you want to move throughout your day. Where in this concept idea is if you start your day with intention, start your day with positivity, start your day with gratitude, then it makes it easier even when things go wrong. You can still find the positive pieces in it. So that is one concept. So yes, it still can help. So it's obviously not like going to maybe necessarily mean that you're going to have a perfect day, you're going to make all the money or anything like that. But what it can do is help you to respond through it. So to get like a little personal on here, to give a really good example, I miscarried back in September. And that was a horrible thing to go through. Talk about a roller coaster. Yeah. But I feel like I responded to it really, really strongly. And the only reason I did is because I spent every single morning writing out a list of gratitude. It's the only change that I did. Everything else stayed the same. I walked through it the same way. I started my day focusing on positivity. I started my day focusing on things that I was grateful for and appreciated in my life. And because of that, I started finding good things in my life. So the same concept can go with what you're doing in business, in sport. If you're going through a roller coaster, if you start the day with intention for positivity, your brain's going to filter through that. So yes, somebody goes to you and says, I don't want to work with you anymore. But this is an easier way now. All of a sudden you're going to say, well, you know, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it allows me to then take on more in this concept. You start looking for the positive pieces in life. So that is definitely one thing. It's definitely something that you don't ever want to, it actually can make a bigger impact than you think it can just by starting your day in that way because your brain will filter for it. Yeah. The other piece I always, say is you want to ask yourself, how do I want to respond to this? And a lot of times when we think about how it is that we want to respond, we think, how do we want to respond, like physically? Like, what do you want to say to the person? What do you want to do? But sometimes you have to ask, how do you want to respond internally? And again, it's all a feedback loop. So we talked about previously how this idea of your behaviors fuel your feelings and fuels your performance. Same concept. The idea that our thoughts, like we have an uncontrollable situation, somebody goes to you and says, I don't want to be working with you anymore. That's not always something you can totally control. It's an uncontrolled situation. So we have the situation that occurs. You will instantly have a thought that happens with that. Then that thought creates an emotion. That emotion creates action, and that action creates response. When you're going through something tough, oftentimes your situation is going to provide you with a really negative thought. And that's going to provide you with a negative emotion. Then all of a sudden your actions are going to be negative. So somebody says, I don't want to be using you as a realtor anymore. Your first thought is, well, that sucks. I suck. I'm not a good realtor. So then your emotions are maybe angry, frustration, disappointment. And then your actions are, well, I can't focus. I'm not going to move on to the next person. I am not going to write this next deal. I'm not going to do this. Well, then your result, the response that you're going to get, it's not what you want. You're not going to make more money. You're not going to get new clients because you're not having the action. So it all kind of feedback loops. So you say, okay, I have this situation that's going on right now. How do I want to respond to it? What result do I actually want? Well, I want to move on. I don't want that person, I don't want the person that says, I don't want to work with you anymore to get in my way of me making more money. I want to respond to where I am tackling the next day. I'm not letting it ruin my day. Okay, let's work backwards. What actions do I have to have in order to, respond that way? Maybe that means I need to start cold calling. Maybe it means I need to get out there. Maybe it means I need to do this. Well, then what emotions do I need to have in order to create those actions and make them easier? And then you go on and say, okay, cool. I want to have courage. I want to have pride. I want to stay focused. I want to be motivated. Well, what thought do I need to have? So you can still work backwards. So that's one of the ways that I use that for athletes. I use that for people in business when they're working through trying to decide on what schools they want to go to. All this feedback loop. And if you break it down and say, okay, how do I actually want to respond? again, what is the feeling that I'm looking for, and how do I get there?
What would you say? Because I would say this is probably my hardest thing is I oftentimes will respond great to the person. And because I recognize that I was grown up taught that your reputation is everything. So no matter what, you want to have a great response. But internal response is where I struggle. And so how do you battle that when it's like, okay, your initial response to the human's really good, but internally you're like upset or down on yourself? How do you battle that when it's kind of not all one, if that makes sense?
Yes. So that is actually where I have had that conversation with people. This method that I actually described to you guys is called the TEAR method. So it's an acronym, TEAR.
Yeah.
So thought, emotion, action, response, or result, however you want to look at it. And a lot of times like your first thought when I described this to you was your outward response, my external response. You can do this exact same process for your internal response. So sometimes what we have to do is when we want to respond to things is we actually have to open up our boundaries to what it is that we're looking for. And instead of focusing on how you want to respond outwardly, how do you want to respond internally? And you can walk through the exact same process.
Yeah.
The exact same thing. Walk through backwards. I want to respond internally with not letting it ruin my day. So what actions do I have to do? And again, a lot of times what it comes down to is little things, small little changes.
Yeah.
Another thing is you just sometimes have to remind and ask yourself, and it's very cliche and it's really silly, but always ask yourself, why am I doing this? What do I want out of it?
Yeah.
How do I want to feel? Where do I want to go with it? And then what actions will get me to that spot?
Wow, Katie, I think we just got our first coaching session. Maybe we should
I know,
hire
I'm
Kayla.
like, so can we hire her? And I'm definitely going to be listening to this one more than 5 times.
This was mind-blowingly good.
Yeah, seriously.
So we're actually running out of time, though. I think that was exceptional. We could probably do another podcast in the future on your training piece, but just want to let the audience know Kayla also offers training programs or coaching for triathletes. Is that right?
Yeah, I coach triathletes, so swim, bike, run, whatever you want to do for that.
All levels, too.
All
right?
levels, yep. Beginners up to World Championship qualifiers. And then there's the mental performance side of my business. So there's kind of 2 sides, but they also interconnect. So I do have programs in which you can combine the two very easily. So
with that, where can Spokane find you on social media? Do you have a website? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm most active social media-wise on Instagram, and it's just at Where Your Feet Take You. There's some underscores in there, but if you were to search Where Your Feet Take You, I would pop up. And then I also do have a website, it's whereyourfeettakeYou.com, and that's where I post blog posts, and those often get relayed into my YouTube channel, which is where I will put some of my videos for informational pieces on there. So
that's called the same thing, Where Your Feet Take You.
Where Your Feet Take You.
Okay.
Yep, everything can be found under that. So
awesome. Well, is there a last piece of maybe a quote or your favorite book or a podcast you absolutely love, something you think the audience would gain value from?
I think the best piece is to really remember that all we can ever do is be present in what we're doing right now. A lot of times we get really caught up in the idea of where we want to be or where we were. But the present is where you're going to get the most out of your journey, because you can't walk through life without going through today. You can't get to the end of the year without going through today. And the more that you stay present in what you're doing right in this moment, the more you're going to enjoy it and the more you're going to learn from it.
So good.
I love that. Well, thank you again for joining us.
Yes.
This was the fastest 25 minutes of my life.
Well,
I love that.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yep, of course.